Welcome to another episode of Closed. I'm here with Mike Flynn, and we are super excited to be doing an in-person live episode at Serhant on West Broadway with five of the top producers in the country, but also in New York City, are joining us here today to talk about a little bit about owning Manhattan, a little bit about the New York City market, a little about the Brooklyn market, and kind of everything in between. So all at once. Thank you very much for doing this. And what I'm going to do is kind of go down the line, starting with Tricia. And if you could just kind of give a 1 second spiel about yourself. We'll get more into it as we go. So
Sure. I'm
don't,
Tricia Lee. I've been at Serhant since 21. I am an entrepreneur turned broker.
I'm Jeffrey St. Arromand. I've been at Serhant since I guess 21 as well. I'm worked in television sports and then pivoted into real estate.
Also, Trisha, you were the queen of now Manhattan, right?
Yeah,
I think we left
he
that
said we'll get
out.
to that.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's what
well,
he was
I
saying.
I, I
He was
think
like,
that
"We're
that's
supposed to get to
Jade
that."
is taking over the interview
Yeah.
very
Like
early on. We haven't even
Well,
gone
I just
through
Intro,
the
not an
intros.
outro.
I think that's a key point, Trisha. I'm Jade Shenker. I focus on commercial here at Serhant. I was the first commercial agent here. Before that, I was managing about 650 million in luxury assets. I come from a real estate family, and yeah, it's pretty awesome disrupting the industry. But happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Jordan March. I've been with Serhant since 2020. Have had a history in pretty much primarily real estate, worked in advertising and also the music business at one point, but I'm been in the business here about 16 years now.
Hola, I am Genesis Suero, former beauty queen, journalist, and real estate agent. I have been here at Serhant since 2021 doing residential real estate.
Awesome. We're done. That's it. We're
That's
finished.
it.
She's also
Good
Miss
night.
New
Great.
York in 2019.
Former, 18.
Forever.
That's why I said
Eternal
former.
Miss New York.
That's,
Yeah.
that's what Niall says. You're like, forever, former.
So look, we came up with the idea of having you all in here to talk about the markets, and we're going to do that. But I would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about owning Manhattan for a few minutes. So the first question I had was, you watch reality TV shows, and I think at least how difficult it is to have to kind of run your normal life in front of cameras. You all had to do both. You had to have your normal life, have your normal conversations, and also do your jobs.
Right.
So, what was that like? How difficult was it? How long did it take you to get used to it? Genesis, if you want to start.
Well, for me, it was very difficult, although I work in television. I came from a show that I was doing back in another country for 5 months, and I was filming every day for 15 hours.
Oh, wow.
Oh my
So
God.
when I came back to New York City, it was ready, set, go to film on in Manhattan. Back then, it wasn't named On in Manhattan. It was named House of Serhant, right?
The
Mhm.
placeholder name,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was like the
House of
running name.
Serhant.
Like House of the Dragon, but House of Sirhan instead.
The
Same
work,
thing.
I like
yeah.
I like-
Yeah.
The
no,
working
Serhant
title.
Dragons.
Sirhan Dragon, okay.
So when I came back, it was a little bit overwhelmed and I was sick. I came back sick, filmed, ready to film, to source business, and to also put my life on camera. So it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
And it was very long too. It was almost 2 years.
Yeah.
It was long, yeah.
Almost 2 years.
2
So
years
I was
of
beat up
footage for eight
from
eight
filming.
episodes.
Plus, on top of that, I was filming for my other job, Telemundo, my job as an entertainment journalist. So during the film of Owning Manhattan, I live in the lens of a camera all the time
For
All
2
right.
years.
for 2 years.
Wow. That's
And I continue to do so.
Jordan, how was your
Amazing.
experience?
I mean, it wasn't easy. I think, when you watch the show, it just looks like there's a camera over the shoulder and not really about what goes into just making a scene happen.
Yeah.
It's not produced in that aspect, but just because of all like the legal agreements and like being able to get in, and you have to get the okay not just from a homeowner, but from the board and from the, all the other, sort of decision makers behind getting in any of these properties. So that was kind of tedious, and just, still being present. Like I have a team, right? So managing people as much as transacting, as much as offering business. So it was just a big balancing act. But I feel like towards the end, we all kind of got used to like the nimbleness of it.
Yeah.
Like they move very quickly, so you have to respond quickly and do everything at a moment's notice and just be really ready.
Right.
So it was a fun challenge.
Yeah.
Overall.
I mean, I know you're all at the
For
top of your
Yeah.
games anyway, but
Yeah.
it sounds like maybe this forces you 24/7 to be saying the right thing, doing the right thing. Is that fair, Jeffrey, or is it not quite that?
Let me just tell you, everyone is sugarcoating it, but it was the most difficult and challenging process.
I mean, I said the
Period.
truth.
No,
And it may
you
not
wouldn't
be. Listen,
say
I would say that for me because, and here's why that's the case, because everyone looks at this opportunity differently.
Right.
And I think it's important to understand that number one, you have a career outside of this. And so you want to make sure that you're portrayed appropriately. And so that's the not the physical challenge, but that's the psychological challenge where you have
Yeah.
the CrossFit between the cross section between entertainment and yet the real estate, most importantly, your brand, your personal brand,
Right.
and understanding where do you want to take your brand and how are you going to be portrayed outside of what's being shot. So that was the constant thought process for me, and I would imagine for Tricia as well. It was a lot of thinking about that, and so that was what made it difficult. Once the cameras roll, that's simple. But now it's really understanding how do I snap back at Jade if she's saying something kind of slick to me,
As long
but
as I'm not
I
being
don't.
smart.
What Jade would never do that, of course. But if you say something slick to me and I want to respond, but how do I respond in a way that's yet professional, entertaining, and getting back at Jade? So it's like that entire process that you're thinking about. So that's really, if you want to get a scope behind the lens, that's really the way. That was a difficult part.
Right.
And
Tough balancing act.
some people were good at that, and other people were not quite as good at that from watching the show.
I mean, it depends on what the definition of good is, right? It
Right.
could be good for them,
That's
but
true.
not necessarily good for me.
Yeah, not
Good
good for their
TV.
career, but maybe good for TV.
Right.
I guess the objective, like not good,
Mm.
was still interesting and engaging, and you remembered certain people after you watched it.
Mhm.
Maybe didn't remember other people, right? Although I don't know if some of it was tactical or not tactical. Jade, what's your thoughts about how you approached your day to day while you were being filmed?
I mean, obviously, it was so easy. No, look, I mean, I was going through a lot, obviously, on the show. I think one of the things, the great feedback was that people watched it and they were like, "Wow, this is really like it seems real," and like it was real.
Yeah.
Like to this day, people probably still stop all of us and they're like, "Wait," they're like, "So how much is it scripted?" And I think for me, my experience going through the personal life stuff, like that was really hard. But I sort of found like working as far as like the real estate part of the job, that was sort of like my outlet to be like, okay, this is the one thing I can control. And then, throwing reality in the mix was awesome until obviously the fights. And it was really hard.
But the producers were pumping their fists during the fights,
You know
right?
what? I mean, like people say they're like, are the producers pumping it? Like it's us, like
Yeah.
it's really it's us,
Non-scripted.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
non-scripted. Like I think there's this misconception because there's so much, selling sunset or this or that, where people think that reality is scripted, and it's not. At least like for us, like everything was real.
Let's say we weren't. Our owning Manhattan wasn't.
Yeah,
I
correct.
wouldn't make a
Yeah.
blanket statement
Right.
about reality,
Yeah.
but owning Manhattan was.
Yeah.
And we're all licensed. by the way.
The shade of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm just
I
saying,
can't
we're,
see.
we're all licensed.
Wait,
Yeah.
wait.
Can I
What
get a
about them
line?
apples?
Well, yeah, exactly. What about them apples? Yeah.
yeah.
That was funny.
Yeah.
That was
Trisha,
funny.
your storyline over the course of the 8 episodes was interesting because it's following you through the course of a major career transformation where you're trying to make this move into a different market. Obviously, it seemed like from the show you conquered the Brooklyn market to the extent that anything could be conquered, and now you're moving into the Manhattan market. How was kind of negotiating the balance between really trying to do that? Obviously, you're trying to grow your career and spread your brand, and understanding that it's all happening on camera.
I think the first 6 weeks, the camera part really got in my head and kind of like had me like just confused. I
Yeah.
like stumbled. I'm very honest about that. It was very hard for me. Like this is not. I don't have any background in any of this stuff in any way, shape, or form. No, nothing entertainment wise.
Yeah.
And so I was just in my head, and then I'm thinking about representation, and I'm thinking about like as a Black woman, you walk into every room thinking you represent every Black woman. That's just the truth of my existence. And I don't think you'd find another Black woman that wouldn't feel that way if you looked all day today. Right? So what I would think from that perspective, it got to be too much and just too heavy for me. I couldn't take it. So then I decided like the most I can be is completely free and be myself. Right. And I think that's the best example I can be to any Black woman and all Black women is just to be myself. So once I was able to put that hat on, like 7 or 8 weeks in, I was fine. And I just did everything that I would normally do. And the Manhattan journey is one part of my story. You know, like I still very much work in Brooklyn. I built a business off of another business. So while it may have come fast and quick, it actually came fast and quick off of a 10-year success run that I already had in my borough. So if you know me and everybody knows me, it's because of 10 years of doing something really fucking well for a very long time.
Right.
You know? So coming into Manhattan, it is doing the same thing, but it's Manhattan. So then I have to build those relationships and rebrand and learn how I'm going to navigate that world because it's two different worlds.
Right.
Like people do it well probably when they start from the beginning, but I never even thought about Manhattan for 8 years. Never cared about Manhattan for 8 years. And then I felt like, okay, I'm ready for that next challenge, but very much starting over in Manhattan for me. And I don't love that being on TV because I'm usually really good at things and this is something I'm not good at and it's playing out on TV.
Yeah.
So I got to figure that out, but you'll watch along as I figure that out because I don't have it figured out yet.
That's a great plug for the show. Everybody's going to go watch now.
Yeah.
Well,
I
that was
think
that was the cliffhanger of the show, right? To see does this actually sell in Manhattan?
Right.
That's
Yeah.
the whole thing. Not just mention the Jordan moment. but
Oh,
we-
yeah. Oh, shit. Forgot about
we
that.
will bring that up.
There's a
but-
couple Bellinis at that open house getting served.
Bring it up. Bring it out. Bring everything
Well,
up.
That's spicy.
actually,
Watch episode 8.
But what happened in that open house, Tricia just said it. The Brooklyn and the Manhattan market are just two opposite poles.
Right.
That was like kind of
That was
the
the
little
conversation.
right? The
Yeah.
conversation.
And it is
So
for
you guys
me,
gotta
I
watch
think,
it.
because I have a network in Brooklyn that is
Right.
expansive,
Mhm.
very expansive, and I don't have a network in Manhattan. So to me, it's different roles. I don't know if that's the case
Right.
if you have a career in both boroughs
Right.
already, or if you start in both boroughs already. I don't know if that's the case. But for me, I feel like I'm going back down to that first step.
But as I said in episode 8, and hopefully you guys have watched and seen it, it's essentially the same thing. It's the same marketing practices that you have, the same skill set that you have that you're doing in a higher price point. But the same thing that has made us stand out in the Brooklyn market, it'll be the same thing that'll help us stand out in the Manhattan market.
And it's not
'Cause the
always a higher
creativity-
price point either.
And exactly.
You
And
know?
it's really the creativity.
always.
The marketing, the pricing appropriately, like that translate regardless of where you are.
Fundamentals.
Yeah, it's the fundamentals.
Sure.
That's
Yeah.
gonna, I can go to Iowa and do the same thing in Iowa. It doesn't matter.
The
You know,
job
or
is
in
the-
LA.
but the
it's the same
job
thing.
is the
Well,
same, but
yeah.
the network is where
Absolutely.
is what
That's
I'm
where it's
speaking.
Yeah, the
of,
network
you
is
know,
yeah.
You can't do the job unless you have a client.
Right.
So you have
Right.
to build the
Mhm.
clientele
Mhm.
in an area where I just felt like I didn't have any connections and I had to start over.
Mhm.
Also, not only the network of clientele, also the network of brokers.
Yeah.
Right.
You got to be friends with the brokers that work here, which can you attest more to that?
Yeah, I
Jordan,
mean,
Jordan has the most friends. Is that what you're saying?
Oh,
Jordan has
this
the most
guy
friends? I
got
thought
one
I think
billion
Jordan's
here
pretty
in the
likable.
city of New York.
Yeah.
I need to learn how to make friends. So we should talk after the episode about how to do
Like
that.
I went to a party with him, and everybody came to say hi to him.
wow.
It's true, no?
It is true.
Even someone,
I think you're being humble.
He's being
yeah,
modest.
he's
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
very humble.
Yeah, that's okay.
Even
That's
the
why he has so
CEO
many
of-
friends.
Even the CEO,
Modesty breeds
I,
company.
I would say most of them are women, but
both.
That's a
You
different
were surprised.
podcast for a different day.
I'm surprised. But
This
talking
is a
of
clean podcast.
This
We'll bring that
podcast
up
is
on another podcast.
pivoting.
No, let me
exactly.
tell
Like
you.
everyone's career. This
both
podcast-
sexes and one CEO who's a woman, she asked me, "Are you Jordan's girlfriend?" You forgot or no?
You would have been smart to say. Joking. Kidding. I mean, that happens. Like, I'm not tallying people who like connect with us.
Yeah.
You know, I definitely feel like I try to walk with this, an open disposition and smile. And yeah, sometimes you either hit at a party or whatever it is. I think.
And you've been in
Kinda
the
going
business for
back.
some time, though, right?
A
Yeah.
long time.
Yeah, and you're
Yeah.
also really
Mhm.
friendly. Like I
Yeah.
feel like
Been
when
in the
I
business
first came
for
here,
forever.
like you were like, "Hey, I'm Jordan." Da 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 da. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I think that like you are definitely very open, very like Mr. Congeniality to me. I would
Yeah.
say.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Former Miss New York.
Yeah, like what is she doing wrong? I'm kidding. No, but
I
it's
need
as
to
I
get
said,
you a
like,
sash. Sorry.
look, it's. I think again, the fundamentals are the same. You find neighborhood shift because even I could be hot in the West Village, but as soon as I take it to, Midtown West is, it's a new set of brokers,
You'll
new
know
set
it.
of rules. Don't step on somebody's feet in this building because they're the ones that have been talking to all the owners for years. So there is like, a little bit more sort of, and it's the same in Brooklyn too, because I also done a ton of business in Brooklyn. I remember it being extremely hard for me to break into certain markets because they're not on Revenue. They don't care about the MLS. It was like, it's our rules, right? So like how fees are. And I remember asking months just to get appointments on certain listings. I wasn't even letting the door.
Mm.
And then when I finally got good with that set of brokers, I'm like, okay, I think I'm part of the Park Slope crew now. I could start doing some deals out here. But I just remember getting shut down, even with having qualified buyers, cash, whatever it is. So I think there are nuances that everybody experiences in every little, sort of hyper local neighborhood in the city,
Yeah, Brooklyn is
but
a
I
little.
think he's also addressing a specific scene and a specific moment that, again, the audience interprets how they want to interpret, right? And it was a scene where like Jordan's like, "Are you guys like, just make sure you understand when you come to Manhattan, it's not all the same." And I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
in the scene, it's I snap probably, right? I snap a little bit.
I don't think.
Yeah,
it-
but
It's
I
a
don't. I
soft
don't think
snap.
Yeah, it's a soft snap.
It's-
It
a
isn't.
snap.
I wouldn't call it a
But-
soft snap.
but-
But it wasn't necessarily
Soft
to.
snap.
It's not.
it
It's
wasn't
not.
necessarily.
It's not a Thanos level snap.
No,
It's
but I
just-
took
it's
it as
good.
an opportunity. Like I didn't take it as anything that Jordan was saying.
Correct. It
I took
wasn't
it as an
to Jordan.
opportunity to like address that thought process because I'm somebody
Mm.
that's been doubted every time I've done a career move.
Sure.
Like when I opened my business, I was doubted, and then my business was business of the fucking year.
Right,
You know,
right.
and so when I came into real estate, it was like, I don't know if that's gonna work. Okay, but I was the rookie of the year. So I'm always like, or I came into this television show, and it's just like, what are you gonna do? I'm gonna become the star of the show. That's what I'm gonna do. So it's like I'm addressing not Jordan in that moment, but I'm addressing doubting
All the
people
naysayers.
when they are
Yeah.
preparing, working, and sacrificing to do something. That's what I'm saying. So in the moment, I say, people thought the same thing when I opened my business, and the mayor thought that my business was worthy of business of the year. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm addressing, not Jordan, because Jordan is saying something that's absolutely accurate.
Yeah.
It was
But-
just collateral damage. It's
I don't even know. I don't even know
Look,
if
it
was
made good
damage.
TV.
It was like I
Good.
welcome the statement
Yeah.
because it's like it gave me a chance to air it out finally.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
I am tired of being doubted. I have killed it 3 different times in New York City. This is not even my city. I came here on my own and built this career here. So it's like I don't want to hear that anymore.
Yeah.
So I wasn't even talking to him. I was just talking.
Yeah.
You were
Yeah.
talking
But watch
to
the episode.
universe.
That's
You
an
know?
interesting point
we all
though,
know what
because
it's like to be. Every
yeah.
one of us at this table are doubted over and over again.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But
I'm actually going to write a book about that.
You
For the
should.
book, I
Yeah.
don't doubt any of you. I'm
That is-
I'm
that's
totally
what-
on
that
board.
would- that's what pushes us to be better.
Yeah.
Because if we were
Yeah,
doing the
doubters.
same thing,
Yeah.
then we'd be at the same level. And I feel like you have to work harder, better, faster in order to get in the same
I think that's
rooms.
true about every single one of us sitting at this table because we, for whatever reason, we are like, I mean, especially like when I first found out you were commercial, it's, what's she doing here?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so
100%.
like everyone feels that way. So you have to kill it, like Jordan, you know what I mean? Like you're out, you're Mr. Social. So that means that you can't do business, right? Like
Right.
that's the assumption, right?
Right.
Or like the beauty queen can't do business or like if
Right.
you're a producer, what are you doing here? So I feel like we all have that in common. And it's like, it's probably what lights the fire in our belly though,
Yeah.
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 you know?
I do think that New York City real estate has become hyper localized, right? So you were talking about different parts of Manhattan are kind of their own, I don't know.
I didn't want to interrupt anybody, but I think you unpacked something that a lot of the viewers probably aren't cognizant of, which is that you have Rebney, right? Then you have a multiple listing service that
You have
maybe
a
is more
car.
so in Brooklyn. There's a Brooklyn MLS. There's LIBOR, right? There are all these different places where things can get marketed. They have different rules, right? And then you have personalities and you have people that live in the building and kind of, work only in that building. So it comes out. You can tell when you're watching the show that there are these conflicts, but you just help to unpack why some of these conflicts exist.
Right.
I think maybe a realtor that's in Iowa maybe wouldn't be used to that. They may just have one multiple listing service that covers 5 counties, and it's like, oh, we all just share commissions. It's that does make New York somewhat unique, I think.
I mean, New York
know?
is an anomaly. I mean,
Yeah.
New York is the only place that doesn't have one MLS. So
Yep.
you have an MLS, RLS, Rebney. I mean, so many different, governing bodies, as it were.
Yep.
So I mean, that does make it a challenge.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I personally, when I first came into business, I didn't, to Jordan's point, I had no idea there was a woman that ran the building. I just started marketing in the building. Next
Right.
thing I know, she calls my manager, this guy, I can't believe this guy. And it was a whole
Right.
big blow up. But I ended up doing, selling multiple units in that building. But it's very, people are very possessive and protective of where they do their business, especially if they live in the building.
Yep.
So, it's all part of the nuance of, to your point about New York and the way it's just completely
Yeah.
different.
Mm-hmm.
If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere, right?
Absolutely.
That's
Oh,
not just a good line from a song.
Maybe
Oh,
not.
I
may-
love that.
Maybe not in Iowa. I
I
don't think I
love
can make it in Iowa.
Well,
I really don't think I can.
You know what? If you have the spirit
Yeah.
and the desire to make it happen, you will do it.
Oh.
Because the song says, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere.
I'm going to tell my two young daughters I'm
I
going
think
to
you should
Iowa.
clarify.
But I love New York.
you
I
actually
think you should
feel
clarify.
that
I don't
way
want to
because-
make it in Iowa.
No, you
Well,
never
no,
know.
I'm
You
kidding,
never
I'm
know.
kidding.
I was great, but I think that New York, like when you become so specialized in New York City, and it's not even just like the city in general, but your target audience for this specific buyer.
Right.
I don't know if that translates to Iowa or if that translates to New Mexico. I think that like as a broker, yes, you have skill sets that can probably translate anywhere. But I think the reason that we're all sitting at this table and the reason that we're at this company is because we spend the time on each particular listing and we understand who the target is. And then we strategize, okay, how do we put this listing in front of that? And I think that we're all very specialized. I don't know if, we could be specialized all over the nation like that, but that's just my
Right.
opinion on that.
That's a great point. Is that point, do you think, at a certain price point where you can target a very specific type of avatar client for a purchase? So, for instance, most of your listings on the show at least are above 2 million, and most
Yeah.
apartments in New York City are above 2 million. Be hard pressed to find
Unless
one
it's
below.
good size.
closet.
Mhm.
Right. Do you think that if you're below 2 million, for instance, is it a broader swath? Is it a different marketing approach?
Well, I think it's a good question. I think it really depends on what it is, right? Because
Yeah.
saying something's worth 2 million, there's so many more questions. It's like, okay, is this a co-op? Like, is this an investment property? Is this in Brooklyn where it's a townhouse? And is this like a possible investment? I think it goes a little bit more niche to that.
Yeah.
Obviously, commercial's very different to residential, but that's been my experience.
I think the higher up you get with price points, you have a smaller buying pool.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the big issue is that, not that the twos or threes are less significant because, I mean, let's admit, like, who's just buying a $2-3 million home around the world or country? It's, it's still something very aspirational.
Right.
But the buyer pools get smaller, right? The clicks are smaller. The wants and needs are even, yeah, like the inventory's less or, they trade slower, right? So like, I think, as she said, with strategy, you have to be really keen on. If I'm serving, for instance, there was a scene where Tricia and Jordan were strategizing at the Ritz about the staging. Somebody could walk in and feel like this is perfect. Let's put it on the market. And there's a moment she said it needs to be staged, right? Because now who's the audience, right? We're talking about the Ritz. We're talking about some of the most qualified diplomats, people who are international buyers who typically spend the least on their secondary or third home here in America,
Right.
and that may be $10 million alone, right? So I think there's a certain caliber of what the staging, the art, the colors, everything's emoting and connecting with that person. Where I may have, something super edgy for a downtown listing, where maybe I could go a little provocative on something or have a pop of red, whereas some other people want to see that very traditional, standard of what his lifestyle always represented and what's the continuation of that.
Definitely.
And like, you will miss your buyer just because they feel like you're trying to do something in a certain neighborhood. Literally, like I've did a townhouse in the Upper East and I restaged it. She goes, I hate your artwork. It sucks. And she actually ended up buying a piece of the art, funny enough. But she just had a lot of like really boring stuff on the wall and just didn't really connect with
Yeah.
a family who may want to see a little bit of color, who wanted to see a connection in a different way. And I had that listing for about a month when it was on the market for about 2 years. By top brokers. Didn't change the pricing, just changed something about how I was connecting to my target.
Right.
And it just resonated with that audience completely different, And
Yeah.
it was staged fine. Like you'd walk in like, yeah, ready to go. And it's like, let's do something a little different because this is what we, predict that is really going to get that positive feedback.
Do you feel like that's changed with the importance and advent of Instagram, the staging, making the home look a certain way, making people feel a certain way when they walk in? Because you used to hear, I remember my parents talking about when they were selling their home. Um, let's not do any work because work doesn't matter in terms of, or presentation doesn't matter in terms of the buyer. But it feels like in the Instagram age and the TikTok age, that's become way more prevalent. People want to feel a certain way when they walk into a home. How do you feel about that?
Absolutely. You said it. People want to feel a certain way. If you compare two apartments that are adjacent to one another, and one is well staged, painted, and the other one is not, automatically your eyes and your desires are going to go to the one that is staged,
Yeah.
painted, and clean. Not only because of the age of social media, obviously, because now properties are being more exposed, but just the eyes. You want the best, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're going to pay $10 million for a property, unless you're one of those buyers that don't want the same thing that another person has.
Mhm.
You will get the other person. There are people, for example, Jordan was part of the team that was selling Central Park Tower, the apartment that cost 195 million.
Yeah.
One people might like that design, but another person will. One person might like that design, but another person will come and rip it off. That's what happened at 220 when
Yeah.
Ken Griffin bought that apartment.
Yeah.
He tore it
I think,
apart.
I think you just blew an NDA.
Yeah.
Well, but
No, that's public information.
Yeah.
Because
No,
Ken
but-
Griffin
but-
bought
some
it.
sense of humor.
Sorry.
We
But
are
that
with
whole-
lawyers,
respect.
Genesis. Pick your words carefully. We are with lawyers.
They're going to
Yeah.
protect
Ken
you. We're
Griff,
the
Ken
office.
Griffey,
Look.
senior or junior? Which one are we
Errors and
talking?
omissions.
I think ultimately, like, people are visual consumers,
Right.
right? Whether we're looking online and we're flipping through pictures, right? Like, we, especially in single family res, you're thinking less investment and more how happy am I going to be in this home?
Mm.
If it's an investment, you just look at the numbers. Sometimes you don't even walk the property. You're putting an offer in. Whereas now you care if you get the direct sun rays through your window in the kitchen, right? So like it's super nuanced, and even to our point of staging even a $200 million listing, it's how much wood am I seeing on the floor, right? Like the colors like have their own brand, right? Like they arouse its own emotion in us. If we see red versus blue versus gray, right? We're not thinking about that. A lot of people are thinking just the readiness of what their idea of what it is, and not really thinking about what about my Chinese buyer? What about my buyer from Dubai? What about my American buyer? How are they translating this onto? And sometimes it just could be super sterile. Like everything is white and gray and kind of boring, right? Like let's add some stuff on the walls. Let's spruce up the green spaces in here, or add some plants, like some
Yeah.
foliage. Like all that comes into play of what you ultimately connect with the decision. And sometimes it's again the same property. I had another one on Lake Street where it was the same exact property. We staged it the same day we staged, we got the offer. And he fought me the entire time. The staging was $50,000, $60,000.
The seller
We needed it for
fought
one
you?
day.
The seller fought you on
Of
it?
course, yeah.
So I
Yeah.
fought us on it
Yeah.
because it's a beautiful home. It's an award-winning building.
Right.
People should see it. It's not a small footprint. It was 2,500 square feet. The rooms were very generous. As soon as we staged, we got an offer that same day.
It was
And it
it was it was the Star Wars poster on the wall that did it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
With
But
Star
that's-
Wars?
Yeah.
Listen, we're in a visual medium, right?
Right.
And,
Right.
and the other thing, we're here at Serhant, so that's right into our wheelhouse. So everything we do is going to make sure that property that we're representing really stands out. So whether it be the storytelling associated with it, with the videos that we do to really make something different, whether it be the way it's staged, whether it be the way it's presented, understanding who the buyer is and how to really connect with that buyer. It's really understanding all those different mediums, bringing it together. And people always ask, so what's the secret sauce? What makes Serhant so special? That's what it is. It's the storytelling, and it's really differentiating this property or whatever property we're listing and make it stand out for something from all these other firms are doing. Because they can have the exact same property, exact same price point, but we'll sell it quicker and faster because of everything I just mentioned.
Yeah.
And so that's really what we do right now. And especially when it comes to this era right now, and you talked about social, and you talked about the impact of Instagram and all that, that's where we really lean into. And that's our differentiator right there.
Jade, how do you approach staging in some of your more complex commercial deals, like the deal on the show. Obviously, you developed a very unique strategy to sell that listing.
He said
But
strategy.
Two very unique
Don't
strategies.
lie.
Well, I mean, both of those buildings, they were listed by some top commercial brokerages. I mean, to name a few, JLL, Bob Knackle. So, when bringing it to market, you have to figure out, okay, how do I put this building that, like, right now it's struggling, like, you're not bringing any income. How are you selling it? And a building, I always look at everything in New York as an art piece. I think a building is an art piece in itself.
Mhm.
And it's about trying to figure out who is the target buyer. Right now, in commercial in general, we're seeing the highest price per square foot in transactions being owner users. Now, owner users are people who used to lease and now they can purchase something. So it was about figuring out, okay, who is the target buyer? And we run a lot of analytics. And okay, like the Anna Delvey thing, that's a little quirky, but if there's anyone that knows how to put a building and remarket it and make it like sexy, like it's us. So I think that was the strategy. It was like, okay, how do I put this in front of a certain uh, demographic that might find this trendy? And we were able to do that. We had a lot of numbers behind it, and then the music video too was something that was very out there. Um, but we were negotiating it with two buyers at the time. And one of them actually had two daughters who lived near me. And they were super cool. They were amazing. And I sat down with both the father and the daughters and I kind of gave them my story. Like my father had purchased a group of buildings back in the 70s. And it was terrible timing. I mean, buildings were struggling just as they are now. And I just kind of was honest. And I was like, look, I can show you the numbers and I can show you how many people are interested in this. And we kind of ran the analytics and we were able to sell it. And the music video was just kind of a
Icing.
icing on the cake. Yeah.
Sexy as sexy.
Mike and I are going to record our own music video right after the podcast.
But like a music video, it's not the way to sell every single property,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like that's what I'm saying. I think every building is an art piece in itself, and the buyer you really need to understand the target demographic for each and every property. And I don't take on every listing. I only take on things very specialized. It's not even a price point thing. Sometimes it's as little as, okay, do I think that we are the best person to sell this? So, it's kind of like a social club.
And the big metric is like engagement, right? Like the music video is not going to make the asset more valuable, but it would probably get your attention seeing Pretty Jade dancing this, this loft, and you're like, well, I was kind of looking for a building too, and I'm kind of looking for a girlfriend. Kidding. But you know what I mean? Like it's really about
single.
how are we transmitting our ideas? How are we getting the word out there faster than our competitors who are waiting on print media, who are just waiting on people to find them on the third page of Google or Streeties or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and finding unconventional ways to start the conversation to then have it funnel into ultimately selling the asset,
Yeah.
right? But like, the art's not going to necessarily change the value of like what it is when you take everything off, like how the appraisers are going to look at it, but
Right.
it would help you, the virality of like spreading the message now. Like we really pride ourselves on reach and having that extra added exposure that we can, get across the world in a few minutes. Whereas, the agility to get to market for our competitors is a lot longer.
Right.
Well, you're on
You
the
know?
you're on the wrong podcast then, to be honest with you.
Do sellers jump at the opportunity if you're pitching a listing and you say it could potentially be on the show? Do you get pushback on that? How often are sellers shying away from it, or do they love it and they're
Pushback.
seeking you to be featured potentially on the show, have their apartment be on
I
I
feel
feel
TV?
like
half and
varies.
half.
Yeah,
I
it
feel
all
half
varies.
of them are like,
Varies.
please, and other half are like, hell no.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Half and
about
half.
50-50?
Yeah,
Yeah.
half and half,
I think the
50-50.
ones
Okay.
that really understand the importance of marketing and
Right.
having your property showcased in front of 150 countries and millions of viewers will jump at the moment.
Yeah. I mean,
You know?
how unique, you can't get any more unique than
Yeah,
being
exactly.
able to be
and
on a
only
TV show.
Serhant is offering that.
Yeah.
Right.
Who all is in New York City?
Yeah.
It's
But
So
what's
you
the
don't wanna miss
conversation
on the
about that?
opportunity.
I think the ones that for me, like there are a lot of people who want to know that you can traditionally just sell a listing.
Right.
It's like I just want you to sell. Like I don't need all the bells and whistles, but I think people are thinking about the service rather than how do I put people in the door.
Mhm.
Right. So like if we miss that marketing component, and again, as brokers, we are supposed to be like the highest or the savviest of marketers, right? Because now we're taking these multi-million-dollar assets and putting them on the market with positioning, with ad copy, with branding, with words, with everything, video now. And, a lot of people I think don't really understand what it means. I think they see like the dark side of like TikTok or YouTube or Facebook. Oh, what does it matter? I hate that stuff. But not
Right.
looking at is this is where your audience is hanging out.
Right.
Yeah.
This is where they're digesting information every day.
Yeah.
We either choose to meet them where they're already hanging out, or we have to figure out other conventional means that may be obsolete, right? Like how many people are looking at the billboard? How many people even buy magazines? Postcards, people throw them out these days. So a lot of these things are obsolete, and these are the things that brokers are really doubling down on still being their effective
Mhm.
ways of selling.
Mm.
Whereas I'm like, well, this video is going to get 100,000 views by the end of today, and I know my audience seen it, so that means we covered this audience, this audience, this audience. Plus, she said the analytics, I can print those out. I can get a sense of what areas they live in, what their age is, what their socioeconomic status is, right? Like there are nuances to understand. Have I reached our target market, and can we still scale that outreach?
Yeah.
Yeah. We did. I know that I'm sure we all had the same experience, but I did film with somebody who was pretty notable. And I know that whenever we filmed our third scene, their agent actually told us that we had to pull back on it
Okay.
because it is difficult. We're dealing with very high net worth people. And sometimes whenever you film, depending on, the things going on, everything's very real. So if, something doesn't go through or if, there's delays for any reason, things won't be used or different agents, management companies for these particular people will decide, hey, let's pull back on it. So I think that's something that I definitely personally, it was difficult,
Yeah.
especially because we're filming, outfits, we're spending all this money.
Right.
Mhm.
And then just spend all that time and then not see something or have
Yeah.
like someone
Yeah.
pull back on it. It was a little bit difficult, but
Who was it? You can whisper it into the microphone really quietly. Who went-
I think your audio guy
We-
might have picked it up.
Yeah, he picked it up.
He'll
I-
tell- he'll
Smile.
fill you in
guys
later.
could bleep it.
He'll fill you
I
in
forgot
later.
who said it. And maybe it was all of you, or maybe it was just a theme throughout the show. And I think we know this from handling this on the legal side. So much of real estate is emotional, and I would think that, and many people think that they have the most unique property or the most unique unit or one of a kind or it's the best, or I don't understand why you can't list it for X amount, because even though there's a comp that says it should be listed at that, mine is better for these reasons. I would think that the TV show is a great way to pitch that type of mindset, because you're giving a showcase to someone's apartment that they're never going to get otherwise.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, hopefully we sell it before the TV show airs. You know?
You might
Yeah.
lose the listing by that point if 2 years later you still haven't sold the property.
Depends.
Yeah.
Depends
depends.
because
Yeah.
if you're one of the seller who really believe your property is unique
Right.
and
Isn't
the
that
price
everyone?
is high,
That's not
Yes.
everybody.
there are some people that are flexible.
Okay.
There's some sellers that are flexible, but there are some properties also depending on the price point that takes more than a year.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But there are some that sells within 1 day.
Hey, this is true. Yeah. Gotta stage it.
Should we shift to the
And
market now?
different-
Should we
and
talk
different,
about?
price points have different marketing strategies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not like one marketing strategy for every price point.
Right.
And there's different product types, right? Like we also are, I think the consumer is more savvy than ever.
Mhm.
Everybody's on Pinterest. Everybody's an architectural digest like guru. So people are
They
like,
don't just have it on their coffee tables; they
Yeah,
actually open it.
exactly.
yeah, but like they're a lot more snobby than ever,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, quote, and I don't mean that as
I
a
take
pretense,
offense
but
to
like,
that.
but like I look at even certain eras of design where I'm like going through Williamsburg and I look at some of these buildings that were built in like 2010. I go, what the heck were we thinking? Because like the interiors are like, I want to forget this era of architecture, right?
Yeah.
And like, but now you have clients who like they have their wants, their necessities, their needs, and we're having like people who've spent millions of dollars in renovation and not really hold the test of time and or really age well.
Mm.
And it may just be that we hate brown. We don't like dark brown cabinetry anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Right?
the
Like,
visual I had in my head, by the way, when you said
Yeah.
2010s architecture,
mean,
picturing that cherry brown. Yeah.
But even just for in furniture, because I look at sometimes just luxury goods as a whole.
Yeah.
Like anything that was of that hue of brown, like the mahogany and cherrywood, which was, I'm Jamaican, so we love our little
Me
mahogany,
too.
right? But like a lot of this
Okay.
furniture that was holding its value
Yeah.
just plummeted like
Mhm.
post pandemic, and you go, what's changed? It's the
Yeah.
taste has changed.
Yeah.
You know?
We can ship them to Jamaica and the DR.
Yeah.
We love
So I
cherry.
Yeah.
I think we could talk about the show for a long time, but I do want to spend a few minutes talking about the current state of the market, the difference between Brooklyn and Manhattan. So I guess Tricia, let's start with you as the owning Brooklyn into owning Manhattan.
Excuse me, mayor and queen, sir.
I have
What-
so many titles here. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
we're gonna find a few more by the time we're done. 30,000 foot view. If you had to sum up kind of the key difference right now between the Brooklyn market and the Manhattan market, I want to go around the table and hear from everybody. But how would you summarize it?
I just feel like there's always so much demand in Brooklyn because I feel like the trend is still people are shifting to Brooklyn
Yeah.
for more for their money. So I feel like there's still like haste when we're negotiating in Brooklyn because I came into the business in 2015, like where you had to walk into an open house damn near with your down payment in your hand. Like
Mhm.
that's how competitive it was. I didn't learn this business having to show a property more than 4 times. Like when I had to show something for a month, I remember the first time I was like, this is insane. I cannot spend my life just showing this property for a month. Because it had been years that I'd been working and things were just going first open house, second open house. So we still are just, I feel like the demand for property is just higher in Brooklyn, in my business at least, than it is in Manhattan. So I always feel like this sense of like urgency with everything I do in Brooklyn. I feel like in Manhattan, there's so much more at play, but it's also like there's not, I don't think it's as competitive, I think, when we're working with Manhattan clients. Like when I'm working with Manhattan product, I don't get anywhere near the amount of inquiries, even if it's a very similar, like last spring we had very similar units and one was on the Upper West Side and one was in Fort Greene.
Yeah.
I would say 5 times more traffic.
Just gotta bring Jordan to more parties.
The pace of Brooklyn is actually just faster, even though, you know, you would think it would be Manhattan. That's been my experience, at least.
I'm a Brooklyn guy to the core, so
Yeah.
I'm Team Brooklyn. Sorry, Manhattan folks.
I'm not
okay.
sorry.
Jeffrey, what are your thoughts?
I
What do
mean,
you
I
think?
that really started post pandemic
Yeah.
with everyone wanting to get more size, and not really wanting to be a part of the vertical living and having the entire backyard and having that entire expanse. And I think that still resonates now. And I think with people coming into Brooklyn, they understand what they can get for their dollar. To Tricia's point, but there's still there's similarities when you look at the luxury in both markets. So the luxury, there's demand for the luxury in Brooklyn, and there's also demand for certain other luxury in Manhattan. So and then again, that's where it goes back to how you market those properties and how you're able to get those buyers for those properties. But ultimately, I still see that the Brooklyn market is, the analytics and the statistics show that the Brooklyn market is moving a lot faster than that of Manhattan right now. But the interest as a whole in the uber luxury market in Manhattan has picked up. And I think that's going to continue to pick up post election once we get, because, historically, leading up to an election year, it's always going to be problematic. And even though rates don't impact that type of price point, it still impacts their overall finances and what the market is. So that's going to dictate whether someone moves or not. So I think post election, we're going to see a definite bump up in both markets, but
Right.
especially in Manhattan luxury market.
Irrespective of the outcome.
Yeah. Honestly, I really do. I really do. Simply because number one, the Fed. I don't want to get. Well, I guess this is the podcast.
This,
Yeah, we
this
get
is the
into
place
it.
to do it. Yeah.
The Fed's actually going to like do a. Not that I have a crystal ball or anything, but I'm pretty confident come September there's going to be another a rate drop. Probably 25 basis point rate drop. That's going to change buyer sentiment in general. And then post election things will settle down a little bit, and then Powell's going to have to again do another rate drop. So I think we're going to, regardless of whoever's in office, post election, we're going to see the industry really pick up. Really pick up.
Post election, things will settle down. Might be the most dramatic prediction
know.
that you've made
Yeah.
during the course of this
Yeah.
podcast so
Listen,
far.
I mean,
It'd be-
leading up to election has been pretty crazy.
I know.
These
Yeah.
last
I don't
2
know if
weeks,
there's
you can't
anything-
go any crazier than that.
Yeah,
Unless
that's
someone
true.
is
We still got 3 months to go, 3.5
yeah.
months to go.
exactly.
I don't know. This has been the craziest election ever. I'm like,
Yeah.
what the hell? is
Turn this
going
into a
on?
political podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Jay, what about you? What do you're more on the Manhattan side of things. How would you compare the two markets? What's What's the difference in approach for you to
And
Manhattan?
commercial has different factors,
Sure.
obviously, too.
Oh my God,
That's
so many
factor
different
in.
factors.
Yeah.
Well, right now, what we're seeing is like a massive drop in office properties. So buildings that were once valued at, let's say, 20 million are now transacting at, barely 12 million,
Mm.
which is
Even the Class A top of the line
yeah, even
properties.
even Class
Yeah.
A. So it's really tough. I think that that a lot of people who own buildings who finance their buildings back in like between like 2017, 2019, right now all of those mortgages are coming due. They have to
Mhm.
refi. So it's a massive opportunity for people to come in and swoop it up. So I think Brooklyn typically when we look at it as remember I'm very niche, so I like to look at markets, block by block because that's how New York really is. But if we're looking at Brooklyn as a whole, typically the investor comes in and they buy, a building or they buy a block and they do it to renovate it and come into gut. So it's more about like looking at the strategy and that's what we do. We look at like the 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, and we kind of analyze, okay, what is the goal here? And then we work backwards from there. So I think in Brooklyn, you're looking at more like construction costs and owners who are willing to take on, okay, like I'm ready, I have the construction team, I have all of these things, and I have these resources ready to go. The Manhattan buyer is, I would say, more opportunistic.
Mm.
They're more like, okay, let's look at a building, and this building is listed. It's listed currently for, even on the show, you see it, the building was listed for 10 million. And they're like, you know what? I see this as an opportunity. Let me offer 6 million, which is crazy. Like that is wild to me.
Mhm.
But they do it and they put it out there. And guess what? That's where the negotiations start. You feel it out. And if you can come with an aggressive offer, all cash, and you can either be very creative or you can come up with a strategy to lease it up and figure out how am I going to make money on this, then I think Manhattan is it's very opportunistic right now because you don't have
Mm.
to worry about the construction costs. Most things are turnkey.
I was waiting for the all Bitcoin offer on the show.
I've gotten that before. Like we've gotten a Bitcoin offer,
Yeah.
which I mean, look in Miami it did really well, but obviously you guys know in February of last year that's when a lot of banks had some issues with that.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's affecting
Wh-
all markets, but yeah.
Genesis and Jordan, anything to add on the Manhattan versus Brooklyn
I
comparison?
think people are less. Um, I think the older buyer was like having to like be so perfectly paced for their commute, being able to walk to work. I think remote living and ultimately a lot of the architectural significance of Brooklyn can really stand out and be something special. Just seeing people literally flee Chelsea, West Village to move to Bed-Stuy, that was getting a bad rap, say, a couple years prior, because these brownstones are just the most beautiful thing we've seen. Yeah, it's been here since the 1800s. What happened then? Right? But like, I think people now they want more. They want, whether it's a study space or a media room for kids or the backyard, or just having being a little bit more self-contained, where everybody's got their room, their bathroom, and you couldn't really afford it in certain things. You're getting a better bang for your buck. So certain neighborhoods of Manhattan now you're getting a better bang for your buck. And I'm also a Brooklyn resident, so I'm in Williamsburg. I get the best view of the waterfront being in Williamsburg, right? I get to see Manhattan like nobody else does. So I think people are now drawn to neighborhoods where there's a bustling restaurant scene, it's dense where it needs to be, it's quiet when it needs to be, right? This got a lot to offer. Plus, I'm downtown in a matter of minutes. I mean, I'm in Union Square in 8 minutes. People make it seem like Williamsburg is that far out there.
Right.
And a lot of people don't care because they're working at home. So it's now, since I'm working at home, do I have space for a bigger bedroom, an office, whatever it is? And I think people are just getting tired of certain things in Manhattan that
Right.
have been so gentrified with the Dwayne Reeds on every corner. We've lost a lot of the quaint,
Mom and
quaint mom and pop shops.
Right.
I have a buyer right now that's living at a really hot building in the West Village that trades at like $3,000 a foot and wants to move to Red Hook because it's just a change of scenery, change of atmosphere, change of energy because of the type of demographic that also comes with, certain buildings and the reputation where they go, this is too much of a scene for me, right?
Mhm.
I'm not, again, demonizing anybody or like really trying to put a magnifying glass on anyone, but like, they were like, we're not in Midtown East for a reason. We're in the West Village because this is what it offered to me, and it doesn't even offer that anymore. So why am I paying this premium when I can get all this house over here and I'm by the waterfront, and there's a mom and pop shops, and there's a sense of community.
Yeah.
Because I think Brooklyn offers that, right? Like, you know who your neighbors are. You care about the guy a street away from you. Whereas in Manhattan, I'm not saying that's not there, but I feel like there's less connection and people are vying for that community vibe.
Right.
So Brooklyn's pulling a lot of Manhattan buyers, right? Which hurt New Dev, which hurt some of the inventory. People are more skittish, even more so than ever, to like buying into the co-op unless that's really what they can afford, right? So like the New Dev, is taking even more precedence where you're seeing a lot more activity in that, or just the condo market as a whole.
Right.
So I think other neighborhoods, rather than it being so that Manhattan doesn't have as much offers that the other neighborhoods have so much to offer. Why not be in Long Island City and I get these beautiful warehouses and I'm only a couple stops to the city? These trade-offs seem worth it, and that's what we're seeing in the market is people are just bringing up locations that they never lived in, but they're just dying for something different.
But as a Williamsburg resident, what's your push onto the L train technique? How good are you at elbowing your way onto the L train?
There's a ludicrous song that goes "Move." I'm joking. You got to watch your.
I was kidding around. I was joking.
It's like any other subway during rush hour. I don't think there's not a packed subway in the city. You can
But
get on
it's
the
always
ferry.
crowded.
But the L train is kind of nuts.
Well, no,
During
hold on.
rush hour.
The L train at one point was like had a reputation of all being broken. Now it's running extremely well.
No, it is, but it's just a lot of people trying to get on.
And there's a lot of people trying to get on because and now there's no G for the summer.
Right,
So like
right,
we're
right.
dealing with the G.
I lived there for 7 years. At Bedford, it is essentially the Hunger Games to get onto the
Yeah.
train.
Yeah, yeah.
Between 8:30 in the morning and 10 in the morning,
Yeah, it's
you
nuts.
have to either win or die. That's
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
That's
you couldn't pay me to leave Manhattan.
I mean, I used
We get the
to
ferry
ride a
too.
train and the J. That's where my family came to Williamsburg.
Yeah.
When they came from the Dominican Republic
Yeah,
many
but
years ago.
other subways are popular now because South Brooklyn's grown, where the J line pulls right into Fulton. It's
Yeah.
just as efficient as like an L train
Yeah.
now, right?
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, I think there's ways you look at it. People jump on the ferry. Again, a lot of people working at home, right? And a little commute, it does not. I think there's again that trade off where people
Yeah.
are okay, like, well, okay, what's an extra 10, 15 minutes when I'd never hear that back in the past.
Or they can just drive, right? Like people have cars.
drive.
But
Drive.
then
Not me, but
parking
like
is hard in Brooklyn too.
Yeah.
And in Williamsburg.
Not as hard though, by far, and they don't ticket as much.
yeah.
No?
But also too, I mean, the ACE I think the CE goes to Burham Hill and Cobble Hill, which is like my favorite area in Brooklyn. So you could do that too.
Yeah.
My favorite area is Bronxville.
My little one-off joke turned us into a subway podcast. But
Yeah.
so I want to be conscious of your time. What I really am interested in hearing about is forecasts for the future. So let's start. You mentioned election season. 2 years from now, 3 years from now, what do you think the Manhattan market is going to look like?
That's a great question.
You know what? If we had that answer,
Right. We don't have
wouldn't be-
we don't have the crystal ball, right?
Yeah, no,
to
cri-
predict that.
No crystal
But
ball.
one
We're
thing
not going to hold
ab-
you to it.
One thing about the Manhattan buyers that no new or old president will stop them from buying.
mm-hmm.
The majority of them are cash buyer. So if Biden, Kamala, Trump, whoever
Biden
is-
would be a wild pick at this point.
No, I know, but you never know. You never know, right?
Exactly.
You never
At
know
this
until
point, you never
November.
know.
That's true.
Because
Yeah.
he might change his mind and will say, give me my seat back.
Yeah, maybe.
Kamala. No, I'm just kidding. But anyways, I think in the Manhattan market, we don't have the crystal ball, but majority of the buyers are cash buyer. They
Yeah.
don't care who's the president.
Right.
If they're gonna buy, they're gonna buy. Good president, bad president, low interest rate, high interest rate.
So it sounds like
Very
you
simple.
think-
Cash
you
is
think
king.
the market's going to look pretty similar, is what I'm hearing.
Better.
Better.
It's gonna be better.
I think a lot of that also has to do with because right now we don't have as many international buyers. Based on the strength of the dollar, that's going to dictate how many more international buyers can come in. And
Right.
the international buyers made a big impact on the market, specifically the Manhattan market,
Right.
whether it be from Canada, Asia. There's a huge amount from Canada right now. But if the dollar wavers and becomes a little bit weaker, and then making the international dollar stronger, I think that's going to have a huge impact on the market.
Yeah.
That's what but I think the dollar may get a little bit weaker, which may be a good thing for the industry as a whole. So that's my prediction there.
Yeah.
Tricia, what do you see as the future of both markets,
It
Brooklyn
has
and
to go back up. I think it can't stay there. It can't stay here.
Better.
That's season
They
two.
teach you, they teach you
Onim
in
Manhattan, it
economics,
has
it's
to go back
supposed
up.
to circle, right?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be cyclical. So I feel like we have to get ready for an upswing. I believe it's going to happen hopefully next summer.
Yeah.
That's what I believe.
Mhm.
I have nothing else to hang on to at this point.
It can't get any worse.
I'm going to try to
There
get
is
an
data
acting
to
career
prove
going.
that.
I don't know.
There is data to prove that what is up must come down. So
Yeah.
we're up now, like very high. We need to come
I
down.
have an appointment at 4.
So I want to just wrap up with one more question. Mike.
I think Jade had one more prediction to make.
Well,
That's
I
it.
was going to say more so like as far as like what we do. I think Serhant in general is leading the charge as far as being able to market things on a global scale and make it interesting, right? And bringing that to real estate. For me, commercial in particular, and disrupting that. Now, I think that more people are going to be adopting it. I still think that traditional brokerages, I think that people are hesitant sometimes. And I think in 2 years' time, we're going to see the adoption of it more, which means that it's going to, we're probably going to be in a different place where we're figuring out, okay, what's next? Like how else can we innovate the real estate market in general? So I think more so it's about, how do we push out our listings and continue to revolutionize the industry as a whole?
I think that's an awesome place to end. Before we let you go, where can people who are listening find out more about each of you? Where should they go on Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, MySpace? Are we still on MySpace?
My
Tricia, where-
MySpace is.
That'll be the 2-year
With this
prediction.
group, you could probably just Google them if you don't
Yeah,
already.
I'm
or they're following them
TriciaLee.com.
already.
You can find me anywhere. Just
Yeah.
put my name in the internet, TriciaLee.com. And I love Tricia Lee everywhere on social.
I'm at JSA Sales NYC, both website, IG, and LinkedIn is Jeffrey St. Arromand.
I'm Jade Shenker. I love answering all of my DMs, so you can shoot me a DM.
Ooh, that's a bold
I do not.
statement.
And I'd like that to go on record.
Just
Write the email.
Be careful
Tricia.
before you make that statement.
And if not Instagram, then you can shoot me an email at jade@serhant.com. I also answer my emails there, and I have a team that answers my emails. So those are the best places to reach me.
On social, Instagram, it's Jordan March. Otherwise, Jordan@Serhant.com. You can find me, as well as all the other social platforms.
You can find me everywhere as Genesis Suero. I like emails, not much DMs. My email is genesis@serhant.com because I get weird DMs like sex, this, that. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I want business.
Yeah,
So shoot me an email,
my director,
Genesis
Bob.
at serhant.com.
I don't get any DMs at all. So it's
I've gotten some married.
You're very
proposals.
fortunate. You
Yeah.
should be grateful
Yeah.
for
So
that.
I get all sorts of things in my
Well, what
DM.
kind of things would someone DM you? I mean, that's-
I don't know, like what's your predictions for the Knicks season?
Yeah. What's the closing
It's-
cost for my?
yeah.
That's what they would DM Mike for, not me.
Yeah.
They would DM me, how can I sue my condo board?
There you go.
Well, this is awesome. Thank you so much. I think maybe a year down the road when we see what happens post-election, we can get back together and see if some of your predictions were right. And is there going to be a season 2, or is that
There better be.
Yeah. Listen, from your mouth to God's ears.
okay?
That's
Continue
right. I
watching.
love that quote.
Continue watching.
Put it on Twitter that you want it.
Yeah, I was gonna
Exactly.
say,
On
make
the
sure
Twitter.
to
Throw it on Reddit.
tag Netflix.
Put it on the Twitter.
Thank you so much, everybody. We appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
That was great. Thanks so much.
All right.
Absolutely.